I'm Professor Von Woot, and I'm a 20-year veteran of our higher education system, a 7-year homeschool mom, a 4-year public school mom, a 3-year private school mom, and a 1-year teacher in a public charter high school. Welcome to Education Unveiled, where we are going to talk about everything in education that we really need to fix. And let's be real, only we can fix it. The politicians can't fix it. The administrators can't fix it. It needs to be the parents and the students and the teachers who fix it. And let's talk about everything that could possibly be going wrong. But first, the news. 2 minutes. The news this week was primarily in education about Joe Biden's extension of the uh, student loan deferment program through June of 2023. The controversy that comes with this is that many commentators feel students won't be able to pay those loans when they start coming due. Well, here's what I think about that. You signed a piece of paper, you agreed to pay it back, pay it back. Well, what if my job doesn't give me enough income? Get a second job. There are many of us out there who have student loans, and I am one of them. And I work as many jobs as I can to pay student loans. Right now they're on deferral, but my husband and I are paying on his loans right now because we didn't want to defer on both. We want to go ahead and make sure we're paying down on something. Also, when you are deferred, it doesn't mean you're not losing anything. What's happening is that every month more interest is getting tacked onto your loan. So those students who have been deferred actually owe more now than they did when the deferrals first started. In the beginning with COVID, it was a good idea because it was really tough for everyone. And right now the economy is bad enough that I would say for some people it's necessary. But listen, if you're a student and you have the opportunity to not take student loans, please don't. It's not worth it. And if you are someone like me who is a working professional, has student loans on deferral, and is counting the hours until that's, ending, there is something you can do. Start paying. You don't have to, but if you start paying a little bit every month, you'll get used to paying it again, and you'll cut down on the interest that you're accruing over time. So, is the deferral program a good idea? For some people it will be, for some it won't. Is the loan forgiveness program a good idea? No, it's not right to punish people who didn't go to college or who fought for this country, got the GI Bill, went to college, and have always honestly paid back all their debts. It's not fair to them. So I would say it's a big no for me on loan forgiveness. But if you need a deferral, yeah, I'm with you on that. I understand how that goes. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? Today, we are going to be talking about the various topics I intend to cover on this program every week. The current plan is to release new podcasts on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on all topics hot in education and all topics that sometimes don't get talked about because it's uncomfortable and it gets swept under the rug. We all know how that goes, right? Your teacher says, your son or daughter's teacher says, I'd really love to pass them, but, or they're not going to go to the next grade, but. So there's a lot of things that get talked about in closed door meetings, and a lot of it needs to be addressed. So let's start with the history of public school. I myself am very blind, hence the glasses, so I apologize for any reflection. Our first public school in the United States was Boston Latin. It is still around today. It started in 1635. Some of the most famous people in our country's foundation were Boston Latin students like Benjamin Franklin. Leonard Bernstein, who's a world-renowned composer, is a Boston Latin School graduate. What's different about this school than other public schools? There's structure, there's discipline. Students are held accountable for their behaviors and actions. There are real consequences. They have a purpose. They have career paths for their students. They have structure that does not get altered. School starts at 7:45 every day, unless there's a snow emergency. And in Boston, we all know how that goes. But don't deviate from it. They offer their students a structure that is something that they can count on, something that gives them routine. And for a lot of students, particularly those on the autism spectrum or those who might have ADHD or ADD, that kind of routine is incredibly important. Breaking that routine can cause them to act out. So by maintaining those types of routines and making sure that discipline is swift but fair, and making sure that consequences are what would be considered natural consequences are actually handed down to students who have broken rules or misbehaved or broken an honor code. Specifically, till you get to the 14th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says that anything not handled federally is automatically diverted to the states to take care of. That's education. Education is not mentioned in the Constitution. In the 14th Amendment, you do find the right to access to a public education if there is a public school in your district, area, region, neighborhood, whatever. Okay. So if you're near a public school, you have the right to attend. Okay. So that is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. However, that doesn't mean that public education is constitutional. It's not what that means. Okay, you don't have a constitutional right to education. You have a constitutional right to access free education, free public education. So where did this all go wrong? Well, let's start with parents. Um, Up until the early to mid 80s, most families were single income families and a parent stayed at home. And that parent would often meet their children after school, pick them up, sit with them while they did their homework, help them with things that they needed, give them a routine and a schedule and a structure, and let them know they were really interested. They really wanted their kids to do well. And if they weren't doing well, well, they found a tutor or they had a student stay for extra time with the teacher or they helped them themselves if they could. But once we became more of a two income society in the mid 80s, early 90s, parent involvement in schools fell away like hard. And it left the kids kind of untethered. They didn't have a routine after school unless it was self imposed. I myself had a self imposed routine after school. Um, and so they don't have to sit with their mom and do homework or sit with their dad and do homework or pay attention to a schedule or a routine. It leaves them, directionless. Now, there are parents who are from a two income family who would still make the time for their kids after dinner. And that's fantastic. And those students tend to thrive. But when a parent doesn't have to be a member of the PTO or a class mom or someone who does every after school activity with their kid, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have to show an interest and you have to be there when your kid needs you. So many parents are just not there. They get home from work, they're exhausted, they don't want to talk to their kids about school. It's their responsibility to talk to their kids about school. The fact that they don't is a failure on their part, not their child's part, not the school or the teacher's part. If a parent has disengaged, it is their fault. So if I have any students watching and your parents are disengaged and unhappy with your progress, ask them to engage. Ask them, hey, Dad, I know you're an accountant. Can you please help me with my math? Or, Mom, I know you work at, um, Eli Lilly. Can you help me with my chemistry? It is the parent responsibility to take care of the child, but sometimes kids, you got to speak up because parents get stressed out and worried about work. They bring a lot of work home with them, whether they bring home a briefcase or not, they're bringing work home. It's all mental and emotional and physical. And it makes it tough for them to want to let's try that one more time, expend more energy once their day is done. So kind of cut them some slack, but parents, it's up to you. You are the first line of defense in education. It's not the teacher, it's you. And when you don't do your job, your student will struggle. but requiring licenses for teachers. Why? Every teacher has to undergo a thorough background check, a criminal background check. They have to go through a financial background check. What they teachers so that they can pass a licensing exam are things that teachers all over the country who don't have licenses, they know how to do it, but take that test unless you have a degree in education. That makes no sense. There are plenty of professionals out there with decades of experience who'd be wonderful accounting teachers, but they don't have an education degree. Well, what does an education degree give you that life experience doesn't? Well, let's make it real simple. They teach you how to do lesson plans. They teach you child psychology. They teach you, excuse me, anything in terms of policy that you would need to follow. Can't you, other than child psychology, can't you learn all that in orientation? Or maybe just take a couple of classes? I don't see the need to get a degree in education to be a good teacher. I'm a good teacher. I don't have a degree in education, but I am a really good teacher. And I have the student evaluations to prove it. Uh, Licensure is more or less just a moneymaker for every state. Any state that requires a license, you have to pay to take the test, you have to pay to get the license, you have to pay to renew the license, you have to pay for professional development, you have to do a certain amount of professional development every year. If you want to teach a specific subject in K through 12, you have to take classes to get certified in that. It's just a money sucker, and it does no one any good. Get in the classroom and teach. That is the best. Failure and experience. Those are the best teachers. You're not necessarily going to learn everything you need to learn in a college classroom. It's not that important. And as long as a teacher passes a background check and a criminal background check, and they're no danger to the student or anyone else, it's just a way for the state to make money. Have the professional development cadre that says you can only improve in your trade or your field if you do professional development. Okay. There's logic to that suggests that's true. Absolutely. However, how much professional development does one need? Teaching is a very static kind of thing. The only things you can learn in professional develop are maybe some new ideas for assignments or new information on the research that's out there on education. There's really not a lot to learn. I've done many professional development seminars, conferences, and I can tell you for a fact I've come away learning nothing new. It's all things I had already been doing, whether for years or decades, and I have never once walked away from professional development feeling like I'm a better teacher. I walk out of my classroom and most of my students have A's and B's. That's what shows I'm a good teacher. When you have a classroom full of students who are getting D's and F's, you got to look in the mirror if you're a teacher, because you're clearly either not giving them appropriate work to do at their grade level, you're not explaining things well enough, or you're not engaging everyone in their different learning styles. That's it. It is not complicated. Is it important that we recognize when students are in crisis? Of course. And some professional development is about that. It's about suicide prevention or recognizing signs of trauma or recognizing signs of abuse. Everyone can recognize a bruise on a child's arm that doesn't look right. Everyone can recognize a child who was once happy is suddenly not, has probably suffered a trauma. Okay? Class in that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Make sure you know what you're doing and how to approach that child, what resources to give that child, and who within your school administration you should contact when something like that occurs. But again, can't we learn that in orientation? I kind of think so. Just me. I don't find professional development to be helpful at all. And then we have agendas and indoctrination. Right now, the big brouhaha in indoctrination is critical race theory or CRT. I've not fully read up on it, but I have watched videos of children getting up in front of their school boards telling them, I'm not coming back to this school because it's telling me that I should be ashamed because I'm white. If that is what a student is getting out of it, then that's garbage. That's indoctrination. That's an agenda. That's not education. Say it again. That's not education. It's someone's woke agenda. It's someone trying to change our schools into something they were never meant to be. Schools are not social engines. They are institutions of learning. That's what should be going on. Learning, reading, arithmetic. That's what I grew up with. I'm highly successful. I didn't need social emotional learning. I didn't need, you know, all of this common core and woke nonsense and CRT. None of that would have helped me. In fact, it would have hindered me. And that's what these kids at these school board meetings are saying. You're hindering my education because you're worried about your agenda. Schools are no places for agendas. It should be about learning. And that's really not that tough to do. It really bugs me. Moving from books to iPads. Urgh. Okay, listen. The brain works in different ways depending on the inputs it's getting. When you are typing on a computer, you are not using the same parts of your brain as when you are taking notes or reading or annotating. You are not remembering what you're typing. When you take notes or highlight books or physically hold a book in your hands, you have tactile contact with that book. You smell it, you see it, you can hear the pages. It is a completely different experience for your mind. And when I was teaching at the high school last year, I gave my students a vocabulary lesson, ninth grade students. I said, here's some vocabulary in the Odyssey that we're going to be reading. I want you to look up the definitions. And they all pulled out their laptops. And I said, whoa, 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 don't you have dictionaries? And they actually said, well, the dictionary's online. And I said, there's a dictionary online. And I implored the school to please buy physical dictionaries. And from that moment on, as soon as they arrived, those students used physical dictionaries to look up their words, and they remembered them so much better. I looked at their quiz scores prior and their quiz scores after, and the improvement was tremendous. And a lot of them said, oh, I've never done this before because they've just been using tech. Tech is not a replacement for a teacher. It's not a replacement for thinking. Sorry. Tech is a useful tool. I will say that. I love PowerPoint. I love being able to show videos in class or movie clips or anything that might help my students learn because they are more visual. They're definitely a visual generation. That doesn't mean we should abandon everything else for the sake of technology. That's just not a good idea. And I've seen it in my classroom. I have students in my college classes who the first thing they do is open their laptop. No, the first thing you should be doing is getting out a piece of paper and a pencil and writing down what I'm talking about. Because when I make them do that, their retention is so much better. And they do better on quizzes and they do better on papers. There's just something about that connection within your brain when you're using very, very different than depending on technology for your source of reading or for doing math homework or anything of the sort. Then we have this lovely new spirit of entitlement amongst children. I believe, I mean, if you ask me, that all started with participation trophies, which are a crock, and letting children know that nobody's a loser. Yeah, you can be. If I'm playing cards with my husband and he wins, that makes me a loser. It doesn't make me a horrible person. It doesn't make me stupid, but I lost. And that concept of losing and learning from your mistakes and learning from failure has been pushed to the side. And they get a zero. What do you mean I got a zero? Well, I didn't think it was required. It is required. That's part of how you learn. And it's very frustrating for teachers to come up against that, particularly when the parents encourage that kind of behavior from their students and tell them, oh, just tell the teacher you had a headache, or oh, no, it's okay, or God forbid, they do their homework for them. Parents doing students' homework for them because they don't want their little feelings getting hurt. That's crap. The world does not care about their feelings. The world does not give a crap if it makes them feel bad. When you don't allow your children to experience that in a natural way, they are going to get out in that world. Someone's going to tell them they're fired, and they're going to go, what do you mean? They're going to have no clue how to deal with people because they've never failed or been given the opportunity to fail. So that is something we need to let them do. We need to let our kids fail so they can learn. Failure is one of the greatest teachers we have. Why are we abandoning it? We shouldn't be. Just things that we can teach our kids. What else is wrong with education? How about subpar administrations that are worried about dollars per student and not whether or not the students they're graduating actually have the requisite skills to make it in the world? Okay. There's been a real push lately, and when I say lately, I mean the last decade, for teachers to embrace social emotional learning. If the child has these personality traits, we need to treat them with kid gloves or else they're not going to learn. If this student appears to have an emotional issue, we need to make sure that we coddle them and not make them upset. That is such bull. That's such bull. That is why students are coming out of high school unprepared for life. They don't understand natural consequences. They don't know why they're not getting paid for a job they didn't do. They're used to getting everything they want. And this is a generation. It is an instant gratification generation. And if they can't get instant gratification, they don't want to deal with it. Getting is almost impossible because it takes time and it takes effort. They don't want to put it in, especially after the lovely COVID shutdowns and students were kind of working at their own pace or not at all, depending on how involved the parents were. And so when they went back to school, they were in a very laissez faire attitude and couldn't understand why that couldn't continue. So they're having to relearn how to learn thanks to COVID shutdowns. And that's largely based on politicians and administrators. They are not disciplining kids in school either. Um, there's a very specific honor code. If you're caught cheating or stealing or lying, you get redemption. And after that, bye bye, because they're not going to put up with disruptions to their educational process. And rightly so. When I was working at the charter school, I wanted to punish students by giving them detention. Oh, we don't do that. That's too punitive. There are consequences for behaviors. Eventually, within that first year, they did introduce detention, but they turned it into a study hall. You have to study down by the principal's office. No, that's not detention. That's a study hall. Detention is you're going to go to your classroom and wipe down every chair, every desk, every board, bang the erasers, whatever. You're going to do something to give back to the people and the institution that you took away from with your behavior. That's a natural consequence. But these administrations don't want to give them consequences because the parents threaten them. They say, well, we'll sue you. For what? After school because they disrupted class? To us parents? What has happened? When did we all become wusses? When did we all become the pansies who cater to their child's every whim? I certainly didn't raise my daughter that way, and she's very successful in what she does. And I can't wait for her to see her teach her kids the same thing. There's no personal accountability for the students. If they don't do an assignment, you're supposed to give them 3 to 5 days to make it up. Well, if that's how they operate, they're never getting anything turned in because 3 days will come and go and they haven't done it. 3 days will come and go and they haven't done it. 3 days will come and go and they haven't done it. You can't leave that up to them. You have to tell them, look, if you don't turn in an assignment, it's a zero. That's a natural consequence. What is so hard about doing that? Oh, we're going to hurt their disappointment and failure. School is where they do that. They will not be able to function when they get out of school and join either a trade or a college or start working. They're not going to know how to handle things. Is the Federal Department of Education. It was established October 17th in 1979, and I remember this because I was in elementary school, and a lot of things changed after that in terms of what administration was allowed to do, what our Iowa Basic Skills Test really meant. It became something that is a monster now. It's a bureaucratic monster at this point, and it's going to be hard to take it down. Its stated purpose is lengthy. To strengthen the federal commitment to ensuring access to equal educational opportunity for every individual. Okay, that sounds great. To supplement and complement the efforts of states, the local school systems, and other instrumentalities of the states, the private sector, public and private educational institutions, public and private nonprofit educational research institutions, community-based organizations, parents, and students to improve the quality of education. Let me break that down for you. Oh, we're going to give you money to help you get things better, or maybe right for the first time. Increased involvement of the public, parents, and students in federal education programs. Education is about the states, not about the Fed. To promote in the quality and usefulness of education through federally supported research, evaluation, and sharing of information. Hello, standardized testing, which accomplishes nothing. To improve the coordination of federal education programs. Why do we have federal education programs? We don't need them. Let the states handle everything. To improve the management and efficiency of federal education activities, especially with respect to the process, procedures, and administrative structures for the dispersal of federal funds, as well as the reduction of unnecessary and duplicative burdens and constraints, including unnecessary paperwork on the recipients of federal funds. Down the bureaucracy. You just created a massive bureaucracy with 4,000 employees and an annual budget that's over $60 billion. That was in 2010, as the last budget I could find. $60 billion. Imagine if that money never went from your pocket to your state to the federal DOE. What could we do with that money? Oh my gosh. But instead, our money comes out of our pocket, goes to our state, goes to the DOE, and sometimes we never see it again, or our community never sees it again, or our school never sees it again, because they have their priorities. Finally, to increase the accountability of federal education programs to the President, the Congress, and the public. First of all, why is the President listed first? It should be the public. It should be the public, parents, students, Congress, then the President. He should be last. He has no place in education. There's no reason for that. And speaking of that, if you go to congress.gov and look up recent bills that were directly related to the Federal Department of Education in the 117th Congress, which is the one that just wrapped, there are over 3,300 bills and amendments related directly to the Federal Department of Education. I scrolled through a few of them, and a lot of them have absolutely nothing to do with education. They're simply bills that they can pass that label it education, but it's really not. And that's where we're going to end today. But our next episode is going to be tearing apart the Federal Department of Education and telling you where your dollars really go, what these 4,000 people are doing every day, and why it is we need to abolish the federal DOE. I hope you have a blessed day, a great night, or an awesome afternoon, depending on what time it is where you are. But please come back and join us for another episode of Education Unveiled. I'm Dawn Wooten. Thank you for joining me.